Okay, so Bonnie, I think we'll go. A big welcome to everybody to tonight's free webinar, Nurturing the Heart with the Brain in Mind. And a big welcome to Dr. Bonnie Badenoch. Bonnie, big welcome. It's great to see you as always.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. I really is. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm super excited because I'm super excited about the year ahead, especially after the webinar series. A lot of people, and I don't want to put you on a spot now, but a lot of people have described you as a kind of a hidden treasure.
Oh, well, that's very lovely.
And I kind of agree with that for sure.
Mm.
And just before we get going, Bonnie, I'm just going to call out a few practicalities just to make tonight as comfortable as possible. I'd say people are very well versed on Zoom at this stage, but just in case anybody's new to it. So anybody have any tech problems, what we suggest is that you'd log off and log back on using the link provided. Mary is going to be very kindly in the background, and if you have any problems, you can contact Mary. Mary's email is mary@pcpsi.ie. And we're going to give time at the end, Bonnie, if you're okay with it, to do some Q&A.
Sure.
And what we'll do is we'll do it the usual way. We'll bring people on live if anybody is interested in coming on live. And it's the same process as always. If you want to come on live, you need to press the raise hand function, which is at the end of the screen. And when you press that, I'll see your name and I'll call your name out. And when you come on, all you need to do is unmute yourself and turn on your video. But again, some people don't like coming on. So what we would say is, we'll take questions if we have time as well, just through the Q&A function. And just before we get going, a big thank you to Robert and Mary that are in the background and keeping the show on the road. Things wouldn't happen without Robert and Mary. So thanks, guys. A big thank you. So tonight's free webinar, Bonnie, is very much about a year with Bonnie, which we're going to do in 2022. And I feel very privileged that this is going to be your last training and that you're doing your last training with PCPSI. So a big thanks for that.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to do tonight, I think the way the training is structured, the way I see it is that there's four main components. So there's the theoretical input, there's the experiential learning, there's the case consultation, and then I think what's very exciting is the whole idea of listening partners. So we might go through the four of them different structures, the different components, and talk a little bit about them. So we might start with the theoretical input, Bonnie, and you might say a bit about what that will look like,
Sure.
who we're going to study, and what the people we're going to study, what they bring to the field and why they're so important.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Liam, for providing this opportunity to be able to do the whole year long online. Spreading the learning out over that period of time in a community that's consistent and all of that is just, to me, the very best form of learning. And so one of the things that we want to put down is this really strong theoretical component. So it gives us, at least for me, learning the neuroscience gave me the feeling of having such a solid platform to stand on. So when things would happen with my people, instead of feeling anxious and not knowing what was going on, I could understand more about what was unfolding inside of them. And saw this was really valuable for my interns, just settled their anxiety so much. So there's a lot of value in the kind of didactic theoretical understanding. So all of my original, it's like that platform has expanded over the years to include a whole bunch of different people. But I, of course, started with Dan Siegel back in 2003 and heard him speak and was so touched by how settled I felt just hearing him talk about what happens to the brain in trauma in an 1.5-hour presentation. I mean, that was short and all of that, but it really touched something in me. And so I got to spend 5 years in his study group. So Dan is the foundation, along with Alan Shore, with his work with very, very early trauma, especially. And then Lou Cozzolino, also kind of the three big interpersonal neurobiology men. And with Lou, with this idea of the social synapse and how much we influence one another. All of them include that, but each from their different perspective. So we spent quite a bit of time with just them. And then we began to hear more about Steve Porges. And that began to bring in the nervous system and the understanding. The best understanding for me is how important it is to know that connection is that biological imperative, and that anything we can do to support connection is automatically healing. One of the things Steve says is that safety is the treatment. Mm. There is a way that when we can establish a safe place, our people will come in and will feel held enough to really become vulnerable and be able to open to healing. So, and I have to say this, every year I get deeper into Steve's work, even if we've done a lot of it and understand it, I keep getting more and more subtle sense of what it's all about. And especially around neuroception and how it is that our system is always sensing whether a person is available to us or not, and how important that is in daily life as well as in the therapy room. So I value Steve's work tremendously. And then I would say right next to him comes in Ian McGilchrist with his work around the two hemispheres of the brain. And as we began to deepen again more into his work to understand that when we are right-centric in our focus, that doesn't mean just our right brain is firing at all, but when our focus is right-centric, it turns out that that's right when we're in the social engagement system. So the thing that's fascinated me about so many of the people that we have kind of drawn into this in trying to synthesize their work is they're all saying the same thing, which is the quality of true presence is the foundation for all relationships that are healing, whether those are happening in the therapy room, whether those are happening in our home, whether they're happening with the bank teller, that this capacity for true presence. And so we'll be looking at that in the didactic way from those people in particular, you know, the interpersonal neurobiologist is the foundation, and Steve and Ian. But then we bring in also people like the social baseline theory guys, James Cohen and Lane Becks. We bring in a man named Yuri Hassan, who's worked with something called brain coupling, how when we're together and we're enjoying something together, even our brains begin to look like each other. Marco Iacoboni tells us all about how we enter one another's inner world and become part of each other, how we live within each other. Jaak Panksepp talks to us about the midbrain circuitry and how they're the foundation of emotion, and how those circuits are very much dedicated to having us pursue connection, and then we're free to play, you know, those kinds of things. And there'll be others too that come in, but those in particular have been influences, and my interest has been the synthesis of them, almost like standing around a Christmas tree or something and looking at it from different sides and finding out more and more about again, how central presence and connection and learning to listen from a wise place inside and a warm place inside is really the foundation, no matter what other modality we're working with in therapy. So that's a bit about our theoretical part. So probably at the beginning of with our classes, we always start with a settling practice, a kind of meditation that we develop over the course of the year until it becomes something we can even do in 30 seconds to get ready to be present. So we'll do that. And then I'll probably talk for an hour or so about whatever the topic is in this way, didactically. And then we'll move into some experiences around this.
Okay, Bonnie, sounds great. And one of the things that I know I was saying to you earlier, that we got a lot of feedback from the webinar series that we did earlier in the year. And I think one of the things people really appreciated was the whole way that you brought the idea of parts in. Yes. That, and especially the way you talked about parts in the context of co-regulation.
Yes.
And I know the next webinar we're going to go into that in detail. But could you say just a little bit about that, about parts in the context of co-regulation?
Yeah, I mean, the way that and again, this goes to Marco Iacoboni's work and others, but especially he has been helpful for me to understand the neural circuitry by which we take in others, so that we internalize anybody we have an emotionally important relationship with. We take them in and they become part of us. If that relationship is warm, then what happens is that person then is a permanent support for hope and goodness inside of us. If it's painful, they're available for healing inside of us, the other part, as well as our own part. So that's why the interest is there for me. And what it says is everything happens in relationship. So when we're doing parts work, rather than being kind of on the outside as a coach and getting the parts to work together inside, the relationship is between the therapist and the person that they're working with in all of their parts, knowing that what's happening is that they're internalizing me, if I'm the therapist, again, as a warm and caring and steady and solid part of themselves now, so that they begin to feel that. I've had one client say that what she feels is like my presence is like a warm Franklin stove in her chest.
Wow.
After being with her for a very long time, and all I'm, it's not so much about me as that's what's supposed to happen for us in our relationships when we're young. And most of the people sitting in our counseling rooms didn't get that. So what we're doing is picking up what was missing in childhood, where they could internalize someone warm and caring and have them be there all the time, and allowing that process now to develop. And when we can truly enter into with them a safe place, that internalization of that safety through co-regulation is what happens. So rather than kind of standing back and being a coach, for me, it's leaning in and being present and knowing that they're taking me in and I'm taking them in and carrying them with me as well, so that we have this ongoing relationship that's really powerful outside of the counseling room. That's a healing thing that continues on.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, and then, Bonnie, if we talk a little bit about the second component of the course, there's going to be a big emphasis on experiential learning. So
Yes.
could you say a bit about that, please?
Absolutely. I think it goes down, the core of it for me anyway, is I know when I learn something new, if I'm not able to get it into my body where it feels like it's part of me, then if I talk to somebody about it, I'm just giving them ideas. I'm not giving them an experience. So in all of our teaching that we've done, we've been doing this year-long training for about 10 years now here in Washington State. And so there's a lot of time spent on actually doing some experiences around it so that it becomes part of our own system. So then when I offer something to a client, what I'm offering to them is not only the idea of it, but my felt sense of what this is actually about. So there's all kinds of experiences we can do. I mean, when we're talking about the embodied brain, one of the experiences is to say, be with our muscles and feel how our muscles talk to us and have that experience. And then hopefully carry some of that outside of the training itself, and maybe do that in the month, do that regularly on your own in the month between when we're together, and then be able to come back and touch in about what that experience is like and how it develops and grows. So this kind of very specific to particular learning kinds of things. We'll do lots of things like that just match what we're talking about. But one of the big things that I'm so excited about, when we had to go to doing things more online because of COVID, because of the pandemic, we were very concerned, because one of the major components of our work is doing Sandtray, which is a much more right hemisphere embodied experience of what we're talking about. So then in the early part of COVID, we had the opportunity to train with Teresa Kessley and Janice English in something called Soul Collage. So now we had a way to begin to bring this work, this experiential work, online, where people didn't have to have their own trays and their own figures. So with all due gratitude to Sina Frost, who developed Soul Collage, we've taken her work and modified it in a way that it's much more like Sandtray work, where the figures are calling to you, and you find that these small cards, are just constellating themselves in a way that's really quite remarkable. So we're going to be doing those, I think, about every other time we meet. And then we'll talk about listening partners in a minute about that, but that people have the experience of whatever's touched inside and awakened by what we're talking about, of it coming out in a more right hemisphere embodied way on this card. And then hoping we could have someone to share that card with as well. So that's also going to be a part of the experiential piece. And I think we're having a meeting shortly before we actually begin at the end of January to talk about all the particulars of actually preparing to do this. It's pretty easy. There's a million images on the web, and we have magazines and all those kinds of things, but you can find anything that might touch you and pretty easily create it. So we will talk about that a lot more when we have that initial meeting too about it, and share some of the cards and all of that. I always thought collage was silly, honestly, until I did this. And I have found it to be the most rich and touching kind of experience. I'm kind of shocked. In fact, I keep some of them there, feel very inspirational to me. Here's one.
Wow. Wow. So you made that yourself, Bonnie, from different,
Yes.
oh wow.
Just from things that were cut out, and they just one day, I mean, they came together very quickly. I was just in a certain kind of place inside, and out it came. I think it took me maybe 10 minutes at the most to put this together. So you have a variety of images. It's amazing how they'll speak to you. And this particular one feels so supportive to me that I keep it along with another one right here where I can see them, because it really helps to settle me. It's amazing how co-regulating they can be, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
And sometimes I also have cards where a great deal of pain came out, a lot of implicit kinds of things that then I could sit with the support of my partner and work with those images as well. So you just never know what will show up, but it's really powerful.
Brilliant. And are we going to, for the year, is going to be some art as well, or is it going to be all collage?
Well, there'll probably be some non-dominant hand drawing too. And I usually kind of do that just sort of when it strikes me, like, we've talked about the autonomic nervous system. Let's see what your right brain would have to say about that. And we'll do some non-dominant hand drawing around that, and just allow, again, our bodies to respond to the didactic information that's been offered.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Because it's always touching us. I mean, whether we do this experientially or not, it doesn't mean that what we talk about isn't touching us. It's just honoring what's already happening and allowing it to embed in a way that it becomes very something we can share from a really heartfelt place with the people we're with.
Brilliant, Bonnie. So the third piece then is something that we've never done before. So it's something that I'm super excited about. The whole idea of case consultation. So I have no idea what it's going to look like because nobody's ever done it. So could you say a bit about that and what you hope to achieve with that and how that fits into the whole year?
Yeah, it's I just, with a group that we met with last weekend, I did it online for the first time. We always do it in our in-person groups. And instead of calling it case consultation, it's more like client bringing into the room consultation because we don't see cases, we see clients, we see human beings. And so the invitation is to speak to, for whoever wants to, whoever would like to do this with me, is to speak to this person and how you experience them and what it's like when they walk into the room, much more than it's a white male, 22 years old. I mean, that's fine, but that doesn't tell me anything about what the connection is like or how this person affects you when they come into the room. And so what we hope for is to begin to get a living sense of this person, because that person's internalized in you. If you're thinking of bringing this person into the room here, it's because you've already got that person inside. And as you speak from that place where that person lives inside of you, that person will begin to feel alive to all of us. And we'll have this big circle of who knows how many people holding you while you share with us what it's like to work with this person. So in the process of that, it's always helpful to hear something about the person's history, because that can begin to deepen us into the place of what are they bringing into the room? Who are the members of their inner community that are coming with them? What kinds of experiences might have been felt by them to be traumatic, even if they're these quiet traumas of mom's back was turned most of the time. She was just involved in everything. And we begin to feel that. So then we get to begin to be with the two of you as a couple who's engaged in this very intimate dance of therapy. And at some point, most of the time, what happens is you might say something to me for me, when this person comes in, let's say I think about them coming in, I begin to feel some anxiety. And then only to the depth and to how you feel like you want to move forward, we can begin to explore what's touched inside of you. And if there's a younger part of you that's waking up around this, that maybe we can provide some comfort and care for that part too. Because all of us comes into the therapy room. You know, we don't just send our professional self in and cut everything else off. Our whole self is there. Our attachment system is there. Our implicit memories are there. And we're going to be touched. And I have found over all these years of teaching now and talking with people that the single component that's most missing for people is when I say to them, who's got your back as a therapist? Who listens to you? I would say between 80 and 90% say nobody. And it breaks my heart. It just feels inhumane for us to take on so much from our people and not have a place to share it. So in these case consults, one of the things I hope for everybody who's with us, because the work of one is always the work of all. I hope everybody that's listening with us begins to get the sense of the value of having someone who can sit with us as we explore what's being touched in us by this. So that's my hope. Now, that can happen. But again, this is a very public forum, and you may, if you decide to do a consultation with me, may only want to go a tiny way into your own world, or you may go deeply into it. I don't know how that will be, and it's 100% up to you. And it needs to be exactly how it feels safe and comfortable for you. But I will say this, and that is, if you're feeling brave enough to do this and you bring someone that you're feeling you have some kind of struggle with, that will get you the most help probably. If you come in and bring someone where everything is going smoothly, we'll look at that and we'll feel really wonderful around it and be able to talk about what's happening. But it'll be different than if you bring somebody with whom you're having, you know, something going on inside of you that you would like to explore. So I love doing these. I just really love getting to sit with people in this way. And in a way, I think it also can provide a model of listening, because what I'm attempting, but for me in this client consult environment, what I'm doing is sitting back and really listening to what you're bringing to me and feeling how it resonates inside of me, and then waiting to offer something until I feel like I've really settled in with you about what's happening with this person, that we're really experiencing all the things we've talking about in the didactic part and in the experiential part, that we're getting to actually do this together. So we're going to do this every other week. We'll do the collage every other week, I think, and we'll do a case consult every other week. So we'll get to do a good amount of both. Client consult. And we'll work out a process for people to volunteer to do them, you know, to do these after we meet the first day. We're going to, on the first, our first meeting at the end of January, we'll talk more about this. And then we'll begin to set up a schedule for who wants to do the consults after that.
It sounds absolutely fantastic, Bonnie. So you're, and like when I think of, you know, it's kind of a great opportunity to, you know, to be kind of congruent and to be just kind of honest that, you know, I'm struggling with some clients, and that there's particular clients that absolutely fill me with dread. And these might be the clients that I'm thinking about referring on to somebody.
Yes, and we all have those. There's been no part in my 30-year career when I have not had some people who were stirring me up inside in a way that I would either feel like I would feel like, well, if they cancel this week, it's okay, you know, or I have had, I mean, anyway, I just all kinds of different feelings inside, or clients who bring out the need for me to try to fix something in somebody, which I know consciously and theoretically is not what I want to be doing. I want to be present with them. I don't want to be in fix-it mode, but I can feel the pull. So there's all these kinds of things that happen to us, and it doesn't matter if you've been doing therapy for 30 years, it's still going to happen. We're still whole human beings coming into the room. So this isn't something unique to new therapists.
Brilliant. So it sounds that if someone was going for case consultation or supervision to you, Bonnie, that they would get an opportunity. It's more about looking at their own development.
It is. Well, I mean, there's certainly a component of understanding maybe something about the neurobiology of what's happening in the person that can also be settling for the therapist. So we might, again, everything is always, it depends. I mean, there might be some talk about that, but ultimately to really be with the inner world of the therapist, because it's the missing link in most supervision and consultation that I hear, is that people tell me I go for supervision, and what I hear is, well, have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? Well, most of the time we have thought about all those things, but we're still uneasy. And so something's happening within us,
Sure.
and we just, and it can feel like somehow we're not supposed to have those experiences or feelings, but of course we do, because we're human beings. And so the ability to recognize how much co-suffering we do with our clients. I mean, when we go into this work, we make an agreement that we're going to co-suffer with our people. And how inhumane is it to not have a place to take that suffering and have it be held by someone? If I could make one change in all the agencies in the world, like Child Protective Services and all of that, would be for there to be a way that after a person has had an experience that they recognized has really impacted them, that they always had somebody to go to where they could be held and where they could just be listened to and where they could be comforted in the difficulty and pain that they've had to deal with. And it's not a big part of our profession.
Yeah. I think it's a fascinating term, Bonnie, co-suffering. And when you say co-suffering, you mean that when we're with clients, a lot of our own trauma is being touched and awakened, and are we can experience some of their trauma as well, or is there more even to that?
Well, I think there's maybe a third piece. There certainly are traumas, because we all have unhealed traumas. It's the nature of being a human being again on this planet, maybe especially at this time, but probably at all times. So our unhealed traumas can be touched. And it's certainly true that we're resonating with people and we're feeling with them. And again, even if we don't notice it consciously in the moment, we are still taking in what we're resonating with. And I think there's a third piece. We came to this work, I think, all of us, because we have a heart for helping people who are in pain. And so to be with people who are in pain, even if it's not touching our own traumas, there is a way our human heart is touched. And we need to have that tender human heart held. Or we can get closed off, or we can get entangled in ways with our clients that we can't co-regulate. I mean, there's all kinds of ways we may have to protect our own self and our own tender heart if someone isn't holding that heart.
For sure. And this is kind of just a little bit off the point, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Is there anything that you do at the end of sessions with clients or even with supervision, around a kind of a ritual that you're kind of giving their energy back to them and you're keeping your own energy,
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I hear a lot about that, but that hasn't been my way. I have more of a sense, instead of giving it back to them, I have a sense of it moving into me and then through me and into a spiritual holding. You could call it a mother's lap, or the love that holds the whole world. To me, it's handing that experience off into bigger arms than mine.
Okay.
Rather than giving it back, because I don't have that sense. And partly it's because I've studied resonant circuitry a lot, and I've encoded this experience in me. I can't just hand it back.
Okay.
It's part of me now. I've resonated with it. I've taken this person in. However, one of the things we will talk about a lot is that there's another kind of mirror neuron that's involved in all of this that helps us at a less than conscious level, an unconscious level, know what's the other person's and what's my own, unless my own trauma is touched. So there's the way it doesn't become fully mine, even though I'm holding it for the person. So there's also that. And we'll talk a lot about that when we do our week we'll spend one of our weeks with mirror neurons and Marco Iacoboni, and it'll be wonderful. So they're so beautiful. Again, I am so blown away by the miracle that is our embodied brain, and then the relationships that shape it. I'm just kind of stunned into awe by the sophistication and the beauty and the way that all these unconscious, these processes that we can't possibly be conscious of because they happen so fast, are taking care of us all the time. It just really touches me. Yeah, so we'll get to spend with some of that magic. It's cold and rainy here, so my nose is dripping.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
Yeah.
Okay, Bonnie, so we'll move in just to the last piece, and this is a part again which I'm absolutely fascinated with, the whole idea of listening partners. So again, you might just talk a little bit about what that will look like and why it's so important.
Yes, I don't, maybe it's possible that people have never been to a training where the request is that you bring a friend with you. And this isn't to make our numbers bigger. This is because kind of the heart of what we do here, and when we have our year-longs in Washington, is everybody has a listening partner for the year. And so in between the times of the training, they're in contact with this listening partner. And what they're doing is practicing together in a living relationship what it is that what we're learning in the class. And so it would be lovely to have as many people as feel like they can do it, to have a partner that they're going to do this training with. And that you would have someone then to share your collage cards with. And if you do, we're going to be doing also some story or poetry writing around the cards and all of that. And what I always hear is it's so wonderful for me to be able to read this to someone who's also engaged in this process, and that we read our stories to each other, and that these stories and these cards begin to illuminate depths inside that I can't do by myself. When we're held and there's safety in a relationship, then we have the freedom to go much more deeply into whatever the process is that's happening. So that part of it is really important. To me, the most important part, though, is to actually have a lived, regular relationship where the whole idea is to be deeply heard and practice listening well to each other, so that we develop that capacity more and more inside of ourselves. If we find out what kinds of themes come up that might distract us, like if you start talking, I'll tell you something that happens for me. When my clients start talking about dreams, a part of me wants to dissociate, and I'm really aware of it. I had a pretty rugged childhood, and I had terrible nightmares as a child. And for the most part, I don't remember my dreams anymore. I think my inner world decided to just stay away from that realm. But I really have noticed over time that if someone begins to share a dream with me, I have to bring myself back, because there's a part of me that doesn't want to have anything to do with the dream world because of these horrifying nightmares I had as a kid. So as listening partners are talking to each other, one of the things I begin to notice is, when can I really stay with you? And when does something stir in me and I pull away, or I want to fix you, or I'm thinking about my own thoughts? And so in a listening partnership with safety, we can begin to talk about the things that are touched in us and really explore them, because we have a trustworthy partner who we know isn't going to say, well, that's dumb, or or you should do it this way instead. But instead will just hold us while we explore what it is about this experience that pulls away. So we find these listening partnerships to be absolutely integral to our year-long experience here. We make the request that people meet weekly, or at the least bi-weekly, with each other and spend 45 minutes to an hour together. And with Zoom, it's wonderful because you can, show each other the pictures and, all of these kinds of ways to be together in a pretty thorough way. So I think I would say you'll get, 10 times more out of this experience by having a listening partner than you will if you just do it alone. So I hope you'll feel, excited to do that, and to give yourself this experience of what it is over the course of a whole year, not only to belong to this bigger community, but to have this little intimate community to really embody and deepen into this, and also discover that you never ever want in your whole life again to be a therapist without having somebody who will listen to you. because it makes such a dramatic difference. That this can be like a change of, this doesn't just happen for a year, but that you'll make sure you always have someone to care for you the way you're caring for your people.
Fantastic.
So,
And the interesting thing, as you were talking, one of the things I was thinking about, Bonnie, was with your webinar series earlier in the year, a lot of the feedback we got was about the whole series, but in particular the first episode or the first webinar, when you talked about the whole idea of being seen. And
yeah.
I think one of the things that you were talking about, do we see our people as being adaptive
Yes.
or having a disorder? And do
Right.
we see our people as, you know, being traumatized, or do we see our people as having inherent health when both are actually there?
Right.
And a lot of people kind of give feedback that it really feels like that we need to build a tolerance to being seen.
Mm-hmm.
Parts of us that, you know, I was telling you before I was coming on the webinar tonight, and I was kind of joking a bit, but there's a serious part of it as well, that I'm after getting a new computer.
Yes.
And there's a fantastic camera in it. So, but I feel a lot more visible now than I did with the old computer. But there's parts of me kind of are a bit, oh God, I feel a bit too visible. So,
Yeah.
I would imagine that that's the big part of the listening partners, the whole idea of being seen and what it
Yeah.
actually does to us.
Yeah, we have I have a folder on my computer called Tender Readings, and these are things that I've collected over the years to share with people. What you're saying, let me read this short quote. It's just perfect. This is the problem with dealing with someone who is actually a good listener. They don't jump in on your sentences, saving you from actually finishing them, or talk over you, allowing what you do manage to get out to be lost or altered in transit. Instead, they wait. So you have to keep going. It's a woman named Sarah Dessen that wrote that. And I thought that listening is the most profound gift we can give anybody, but it is also a big challenge, because people are inviting us, when they really listen, into the depths of something, and something we may have been afraid to see on our own begins to bubble up, and it can feel anxiety producing.
For sure.
And then if we have somebody where I can say, I'm so anxious I can hardly speak, and that person says, let me just be with you. It's such a gift. And so our whole, something we haven't talked about is how countercultural all of that we're talking about is. Because there's so much emphasis in the culture at large on fixing things, on getting them right, on moving toward goals, on changing behaviors, on symptom relief, and all of these kinds of things. And while that has some value, it's contrary to who we are as human beings. Change happens in safety when we feel connected. And it happens by going all over the place, not by going in a straight line. And so it really does take what you're saying, Liam, it takes practice to deepen into the capacity to sit and let this thing unwind all over the place as a person heals deeply, because it isn't what our culture pretty much demands of us.
For sure.
But it's what science is telling us is the truth about it. I mean, this is what I love about interpersonal neurobiology and all the kind of relational neurosciences that gather around it, is that it's telling us that to be together deeply like this is actually our strongest need. And in that we can find health, because we can deepen into the places where we're hurting and be met there. And that's what's healing. That's what's healing. So, yeah. Super.
Okay, Bonnie. So I think we'll just kind of, if it's okay with you, we'll just transition.
Sure.
And we'll do a few questions. So if anybody would like to come on live, let's press, is there anyone? I can't see anybody. Okay, just check him. Okay, so Robert, could you bring on Paula, please? And while we're bringing Paul on, Mary, could you please post the link for the webinar series next year in case anybody wants to sign up. I forgot to say that at the start, of course.
Hi, Paula.
Hi,
Hi, nice to see you.
nice to see you. I love the idea of having a listening partner. And I was thinking, I'm in Denmark. I'm not sure I know anybody who will be attending your course, but maybe there would be a possibility for some of us to find each other in your course. I mean, if we could, yeah, instead of bringing a friend, finding a friend.
Yes. Well, I think that is something that probably I don't know how much of a burden that would put on Mary, who I think is the one who it would mainly fall on. But if there could be a list of people who would like listening partners who have signed up, I don't know if it might be possible just to offer that so people could find somebody, because I think that would be lovely. I mean, obviously somebody who's really interested, in doing this deeper work. Yeah. So, and of course, they certainly don't have to be in Denmark. They can be anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I just agree so much that I can just feel it would be so different having a listening partner. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that.
Thank you, Paula.
Thanks, Paula.
We'll check in with Mary and Liam and see what might be able to happen. Thanks.
Yeah, I think for sure, Bonnie, we'll do that. I'll take, either Mary or myself will take the responsibility for that. So if anybody doesn't have a listening partner, we'll, as you were saying, we'll compile a list and we'll make sure everybody that would like to do that gets a partner.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. It's just so enriching. And I actually have to acknowledge my friend Patty Wiffler from a group called Hand in Hand Parenting. She's works with families and has been doing this for, I don't know, at least 30 years. And she pairs up moms or dads with a listening partner just to talk to every week that have kids of about the same age. And the amount of the decrease in abuse and that kind of thing is remarkable when somebody has somebody to talk to every week. So I borrowed listening partners from Patty, and I'm so grateful for her work in this world. She's a pretty remarkable lady.
Great. Thanks, Bonnie. So Robert, could we bring on, I think it's Sherry, I hope I have the right pronunciation. Okay. Okay, there seems to be some trouble there, Bonnie. So while we're waiting, Robert, you might bring on Mina, please. Mina's looking to come on.
Here's Mina.
Hello.
Hello, my dear. How are you today?
I am so happy to see the old gang, if I may say so. I've missed the lectures. I've missed the reminders. I have to say that this webinar, the series, has really opened up doors for me. And I so appreciate the book recommendation that you gave me, Kirk Olson, because of course I can apply it in my educational scope of work. And I have to tell you that I really do need support. I mean, it's so hard to talk to people who are not familiar with relational neuroscience. And so I'm thrilled to have a whole year of this and all the different modalities, and anything you can provide us that would help families and children, workshops or tools. I'd really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. It's been incredible. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome, Nina. It's good to see you. And Patty
Nice to see
Whistler is somebody to look up.
I'm going to. I wrote it
But look
down.
up her work. Yeah, she's for families and children. She's the best. And it's all built on neuroscience, but it doesn't talk in neuroscience language. And
Perfect.
so it's very accessible for parents.
How do you spell her last name?
It's a strange name. It's W-I-P as in Paul, F as in Frank, L as in Larry, E-R.
Got
And
it.
her website is handinhandparenting.org.
Okay, got it. Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too. Wonderful. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks, Mina.
Thank you.
We might take a few questions now, Bonnie, from the Q&A.
Sure.
So the first question is from Irene.
Irene.
And Irene says, wouldn't you refer to someone else, the client that you don't look forward to having a session with?
Say that question again. I didn't quite get it. Say it again.
Would not you refer to someone else, the
Oh.
client that you don't look
I
forward
get
to
it.
having a session with?
No, because I would assume something was wrong inside of me and I would get help. At least I wouldn't start there. Honestly, Irene, I have never referred a client to somebody else in my 30 years. I have brought in adjunctive help. Like if somebody really would benefit from EMDR, which is not something I comfortably can do, I would bring in an EMDR therapist into our sessions to work with us and all of that. I really do believe there's something lovable about every human being. And so I want to find out what it is that's blocking me off from finding their lovableness. Now, having said that, I've always known that I will not work well with angry male teenagers. And so I don't see those. And I also, angry male adult, more narcissistic men are hard for me because of my dad. So I don't take those I don't invite those people in. But once a relationship is established, if I start to have difficulty with them, my assumption is something's up inside of me. And it's been very helpful to always have people that I can relate to that will help me find out what's being stirred up in me. And I think part of that is that so much of my attention goes to the child inside the person, the wounded child, and there my heart, there isn't anything to stop my heart from being there. So when that's blocked off, it's generally something that's been touched inside of me that's pulled me away. So I would not leap to a referral out. I would more leap into my own work, I think.
Okay, great, Bonnie. So then we have a question from Jenny. Can Bonnie clarify if the listening partner needs to be another participant or someone we already have a relationship with?
Yes, I don't think there's any have-tos about it at all. I think that having somebody who can listen to you, who's, a friend or cultivated relationship, will have benefit. I think if the two of you are participating in this, then what gets to happen is that the material of this class gets woven in and becomes more deeply embodied, where it might not be able to do that with somebody that doesn't already have familiarity with this. If they do have familiarity with relational neuroscience, yes, that would work just fine, especially if they're willing to, to participate in making collages and writing, that kind of thing with you, even though they're not part of the class.
Okay, brilliant. So then from Delphine, is this course open to non-therapists? And then in brackets, student stage. If it is, would the listening partner be better being in the same situation?
Yeah, it's open to anybody. It's open to teachers, it's open to body workers, it's open to people that are interested in just personal growth and relationship. And all of our classes always have been open to whoever wants to come. It's probably, 80% therapists, but we've had lots of other people come. We've had a poet here. I've worked with a man who's a mediator and, working in that kind of thing, because this really is human work. So I think that yes, anybody would be very welcome. I also think there's a real benefit at the beginning of a career as a therapist or whatever it is to get this foundation in solid, because if we've been at this a long time and our training has mainly pulled us into the left hemisphere and to look for solutions and protocols and all of that, it's a lot of having to work with that old way to loosen it up some, that a therapist who's new to this doesn't have to do. So it's like putting in a foundation, just like you would with a house. You get to put the foundation in before the house is put up. It's harder to do once the house is already there. So it would be wonderful to do that. And I think that it would be okay to do this with somebody who was in that stage. I think that could be a lot of co-learning together. And I also think that doing it with somebody with more experience would be fine. Again, because the listening partnerships are not about how much do I know, but about how vulnerably can we learn to share with each other and begin to investigate our own inner worlds, together, that it doesn't have to do so much with what is known already.
Okay, great, Bonnie. So then Beverly says, Bonnie, your passion is inspirational. And then she said, Paula, love your listening partner.
That's great. Well, I think that because, especially during the time of doing the research for Heart of Trauma, I developed such a love affair with the intricacy of our human bodies and the intricacy of our relationships with each other, that it really did. I feel as a little old lady, it has given me many years of healthy life to be so in love with how all of this works and how it works to our benefit. So yeah, there's a lot of passion and joy and laughter and amazement about all of this that really does fill me regularly. So thank you for noticing.
Okay, great, Bonnie. So then from Patricia, just wondering what you would recommend that might be useful to be doing now in order to set up some preparation for this course, i.e. reading, podcasts, journaling.
Yeah. Well, it would be lovely. I mean, if you felt inclined to do it, I would say that reading Heart of Trauma might be a good place to be doing some reading in, because we'll be talking about a lot of the ideas that are there, that being the most recent thing that I've written, and really the place where it feels like while I was writing, all of these wonderful relational neuroscience people were just kind of standing around me, watching me and guiding me and all of that. So it feels like they really filtered into the book. So you could do that if you want to. You don't have to, but you could. The other thing is to start looking for images that touch you, looking in magazines and catalogs and online, and beginning to, remembering that the cards will be 8x5. So they're smaller, generally smaller images. And to begin to look for images that really touch you, and then just stick them in an envelope. Here's my envelope. I have it right here. And when I start to feel that urge to make a card, I have all of these, various things in here that I can reach in and see what speaks to me today. So to go ahead and collect those things, I would say would be another good place to be. You could listen to some podcasts. If you go, my website, our website is nurturingtheheart.org. And on there are some resources of various podcasts and things like that. But that feels less urgent to me than maybe delving into a little bit of the relational neuroscience through the book. And again, beginning to get ready to have your system be ready to play with images. So those things come to mind.
And one of the things that I would kind of recommend for people, which I think is a fantastic resource on your website, Bonnie, is the podcast, The Myth of Self-Regulation.
Yeah.
That's absolutely so rich. And I've gone through it about 3 times, and every time I go through it, I get something else from it. There's just such a depth in it, really.
Well, thank you. Tammy, it was for Sounds True. And Cammie Simon and I were talking about, what could be an interesting title. So we thought of something really iconoclastic, the myth of self-regulation. And so it was one of my favorites.
Fantastic. And just, I think we just have last two. Well, there's one, just some appreciation again for you, Bonnie, and it's from Angie. Not a question, just a lot of gratitude for bringing this to light.
Oh, thank you.
And then we have Delphine says, thanks so much, Bonnie. I have done a 6 months in-depth IPNB course with Dan Siegel and Liam's course with Deb Dana, and it feels so wonderful to feel that you will integrate it all together.
That's certainly what we'll be doing, is that integration, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful, the gifts that have been given to us by all of these people, and to begin to kind of hold them all together is really a privilege. Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, Bonnie, the time is after catching up with us.
Well, it was lovely to be here.
It was great to see you, and there's just a few people have been sending in questions around the recording. And I just want to say before we finish, and I forget, that if you miss a live webinar, we'd love everybody to be there for all the webinars, but life is life, and the reality is that life happens, and
Yes.
especially on the weekends, people will miss. But Robert is really very competent and very efficient with the recordings. So usually with the recordings, they're on a Saturday, and usually at the latest, they're out 72 hours after the live event. So if anybody misses a live event, it's not a big deal. You get the recording, and you'll have a few weeks to catch up before the next webinar. So that's not a big deal. And just before we go, just a big thank you to you, Bonnie. It was just really so nice to see you again.
Yes, it's lovely to see you too, Liam, with your bright new computer and everything.
Yeah.
I like you being very visible.
So I'm all set now for the year. I have the new computer, which is fantastic. And a big thank you again to Robert and Mary in the background. And we're back. I think I have the date here. We have another webinar on the 11th of November, and we're gonna look at that webinar, Bonnie. I think we've decided that there's been a lot of interest in parts work, and especially parts work in the context of co-regulation. So Bonnie's going to talk for maybe 30 or 40 minutes on that subject, which I'm really looking forward to. And because people gave a lot of feedback about that in the earlier webinar series, that really was so helpful to think about in the context of co-regulation versus self-regulation.
Yes.
So until then, Bonnie, have a nice few weeks.
Thank you, you too, and thank you all for being here.
And a big thank you to everybody that joined, and we look forward to seeing people soon. Bye. Thanks, Bonnie.
Bye.